Getting stuff out. This is a two competitor uh, scale stock model with four inputs for supply and demand each. 45-degree supports and springs, possibly double pendulums. Okay, so there is a flat uh, metal square between all the supports and a ball on top. The quadrant or side of the ball tells us if the tells us which competitor is winning at any time. The trace of the ball over time is the competitorial stock price of the two stock market shares. The two stock market shares. Let's see what happens. See if that is fascinating, highly intuitive mechanical model for visualizing market dynamics, and we've essentially conceptualized a mechanical analog computer for market competition. It is a mechanical analog computer. So you have four inputs for supply and demand for two competitors. You have a 45-degree support and springs, flat metal square and ball, and I was like simulate and plot. Simulate and plot. See what happens. We'll see if we can get a render of this mechanical analog computer, which, as I said in earlier videos, you can always boot this as Unix. So the first one, what do we have here, is a mechanical stock model phase space, or the trace, and then you have resulting market price charts over time. A little bit different. To bring your conceptual hardware model to life, I simulated the physics of the system using a spring mass damper differential equation framework coupled with a nonlinear chaotic driving forces. So we want the invisible hand to put supply and demand weights off and on over time. Really what we want to do, we almost got like a program. That is the program for the computer. It's got two stocks. You put supply and demand weights onto the mechanical analog computer over time. We get something looks a little bit more like a stock, man. Even has seasonal trends. So shifting weights, invisible hand, that's cool. So I want like boot this as Unix without Python. Remember that. Python. Run a supply and demand program for Google versus Apple over time. What can we correctly quali- qualitatively deduce from the program over 3 years? Like just run it. Run it, run it, man, run it. So you can boot it with that bkern.exe that I built, that virtual Unix subsystem. Phase space logic matrix, Google versus Apple. Instead of a Python runtime, the qualitative dynamics of the system over a 3-year epoch are evaluated through a direct, discrete state space differential matrix. A lot of stuff happens. Like I said, computer science really is the language of physics. Qualitative deductions over a 3-year life cycle, momentum, inertia, and trajectory hysteresis. Because the mechanical system relies on physical mass and spring tension, the price changes exhibit hysteresis. When Google supply weight is heavily switched off, inducing a demand spike, the ball does not instantly teleport to the right. It undergoes an acceleration phase dictated by the physical mass. You got a quadrant drift versus pendulum noise, and you got orbital energy versus a volatile metric balance point paradox. The dead center of the plate represents absolute market equilibrium, where both competitors are perfectly balanced against their supply. Man, who wins? Evaluating who wins in the mechanical phase space over a 3-year epoch comes down to whether you look at the underlying structural pulls, the weights, or the instantaneous location of the ball, the momentum at the end of the timeline. And the Google servo, we got a servo here, x-axis. Google's demand weights are being continuously pulled forward by staggering fundamental growth, with a 1-year earnings accelerating at a massive 82%. Apple servo y-axis, Apple's weights rely heavily on its massive safe haven, premium multiple, and sheer brand value, even while its baseline earnings growth moves at a more stable 22% pace. There's double pendulums for micro chaos interference. Sudden kinetic kick flings the ball temporarily out of quadrant 1 and deep into quadrant 2. Who wins? Immediate term, Apple wins. Over 3 years, Google wins. Render device. I wonder if it's possible to add RAM to it. What would that do? What would be the point? We do have a computer here. Let's see if I can. Okay. Render device. Now. What happens? There's an underlying noise generator. There's a double pendulums. Look at that. Look at that. It's not really correct. That's not correct. But you see the ball getting traced out by the plate, kind of, sort of. That's not correct. That's not correct. Look, it might not be able to do it. The initial description and re-render, do-render. This is like trying to get it to understand a seven heaven earth to a Bacchus. That's a little bit better. A little bit better. You see where the ends are being fed, supply and demand there. Nice little dashboard for this. Nice dashboard. I'm gonna save that. Especially if you are getting the data, right? Just a nice dashboard of sorts, and you can deduce supply and demand numbers for stuff, for their products. I think, which for their product, you can get supply and demand numbers for their products. When the inputs are dynamic, the dashboard moves beyond simple analysis and becomes a powerful predictive engine for market psychology. By observing the vectors, you can instantly see where institutional sentiment is moving. Cool. Trade thesis. This is a maximum pain capitulation bottom. While volatile, a dynamic rebalancing is often high probability of him. So I'm gonna see what can I do is if I go to gems and your gems, create a new one. And what's like a quadrant scale. It's like a two competitor stock market ball scale with 4 inputs for supply and demand. Two competitor stock market ball scale with 4 inputs for supply and demand. Let's see what else it say. Add that little upload file here. Files. Save that gem. Or the chat. Now, so, what is the supply and demand of Google versus Apple right now based off of stock data? Let's see if we can determine what the supply and demand is. Based on the interface schematic provided in the file, The market tracking system places the current status of Google versus Apple squarely inside quadrant 2. Apple dominance, Google retraction. So it's got, I think it's going to deduce the supply inputs, Google supply inputs, Google demand inputs. I think those are over time. Supply and demand inputs. So, what are those supply and demand units? Indicates that the specific mechanical parameter, the mathematical balance of forces favors Apple dominance, Google retraction. In the de-rendered mechanical system, version 2.1 schematic, supply and demand figures. Okay, but I want you to grab, I want you to boot this as Unix. I want you to boot this as Unix. Unix, man. Okay, cool. It's doing it. Now grab stock data and deduce actual units of supply and demand. Like how much are they supplying, how much is the demand? And deducing the core units, the interface converts massive structural equity data into fractional scalar values to feed the balance XY plot. Shares outstanding in billions. The upper right panel tracks Google supply inputs with a timestamp range, outputs values like 1.2, 1.49, 3.88. Alphabet currently has roughly 12.1 billion total Class A and Class C common shares outstanding. The deduction, the scale's fractional input represents billions of shares outstanding across its varying institutional, internal, or share class trenches. 12.55, mapping directly to Alphabet's historical total share pool. Demand inputs, daily market trading volume in millions. So, now simulate stock prices over next year. I am tired of reading. And this is not actually Google and Apple. I will plot. So I'm tired. I don't know if this works. Zero out. Calibrate for Google versus Apple over last 2 years. Predict next year. Just based off this little machine. This is not the reality. Absolutely not. Anything could happen. It's not gonna do it. Copy it. Paste that. Come on. Plot next year. I don't know what it looks like. See what that looks like. Okay. That is the predicted plot based off this little silly little thing. Google pretty much stays even. Apple rises. Predictive 12-month trajectory for Google versus Apple has been plotted below using the calibrated four input mechanical model. That's cool. I'm kind of happy.